All right, it is my Friday. You people got to work 2 more days. You can suck it. It's my Friday as we stare at another 4-day weekend. Oh, who am I kidding? I paint houses. I'll be painting deck.
Season, and I started writing all over the internet, and I was provided an opportunity with Eklund at Hockey Buzz to write about the Minnesota Wild, and
You're an enthusiast. I mean, you're the definition of an enthusiast.
oh, I'm diehard.
Yeah.
Diehard.
And I'll tell you what. I hope you take this in the spirit it was intended, or that it is intended, because you've come a long way. And like I remember, you would write it, and you'd tweet it, and you'd ask me to retweet it to get it out to a larger audience, and I would. And at the beginning, I had a couple of people saying, what are you tweeting this out there for? And I was like, well, give the guy a chance. Sure. And now I don't ever get any of those, and I get people retweeting my retweets.
Sure.
So, dude, I mean, you whatever it is you were that you were
progress.
But yeah, I mean, you whatever it was you weren't doing, you're doing it now. I mean, people love your stuff. They really love your stuff.
Well, Jeff, I think that's the evolution of it. So, now there's a term, internet media or bloggers.
Yep. Or podcasters.
Or podcasters.
Seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
So then people decide for you that, you're not as good as this guy or that guy or whatever it is. And what you have to do is you have to have thick skin and you have to create content and you take ideas.
Yeah. How have you separated yourself? Because I talk to people on Twitter. I've got a guy coming in next week. His name is Scott Schweitz. He's an old friend of mine, St. Paul guy, East Side guy, Hill Murray guy. And he says that he gets bombarded with wild content and wild bloggers, but you're the one he reads. I mean, you've done something to separate yourself. What do you think it is?
Honestly, I think it's I conduct myself as an adult.
Screw that.
And ultimately what it is I have my take on what's taking place. And what I try to do is I try to work hard enough to understand what's taking place with the Wild,
sure,
how it affects what's going on, and then I put my ideas out there. Ultimately, I'm not looking to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm looking to foster a conversation between Wild fans that doesn't take place in the comment section of like Russo's blog, where it's just people talking about how stupid the other guy is. Mm-hmm. Rather, we're talking about hockey, and especially like this is like the renaissance for Minnesota Wild hockey right now.
It's a great time, isn't it? Very fun, very exciting time.
And so, I think at Hockey Buzz, I've had a chance to iron out my stuff. I'm not a journalist.
Well, you're becoming one.
I'm a fan that writes, and I write my ideas. So, I get savaged for misspellings and run-on sentences, and
you don't have an editor?
And I think.
Do you edit? You want to edit?
No.
Sure.
I'm not offering my services.
I willingly would allow you to edit. I think ultimately, like the way our personalities match up, Jeff, is that we both kind of have a run-on tendency of our thought process.
I know it. It doesn't lend itself to writing because the best tips I've ever gotten about writing are just an economy of words. Say what you can say in as few words as possible. Just short sentences. And once you finish writing it, go read it and take out any word that you don't need or any phrases that you don't need. It's just all about an economy of words. Make it quick and easy and digestible, really.
And I also think it's about ownership. This is a new era. So Eklund's been talking a lot about internet media being taken seriously by teams and the PR staff, and giving internet media types, myself, the hockey writers, aspiring types, the opportunity to get into the press box to
right.
have access to teams. But I think the teams are a little hesitant because there needs to be oversight or there needs to be a go-between. So I think ultimately, if you have ownership in the ideas that you put out there, and if you're a diehard like I am, and you want hockey content, that's what I try to provide, and that's what's really helped me to be successful. And it's been a whirlwind year for me with my writing because the Wild Hockey Buzz community has been so supportive. There's other places. Hockey Wilderness does a pretty good job, and those guys are fun. We have a different lane and we do different things, but we bump into each other and we'll talk back and forth on Twitter, which is a good thing. It should be challenged opinions and challenged content.
Absolutely. Let's get out of the business of it all for a second. Just talk about the team. Because it's an exciting time for the Minnesota Wild. It's an exciting time to be a hockey fan in Minnesota. Obviously the off seasons in recent years have brought some big time talent, some high flying talent. Now, let's start with the forwards, because this team, if you're going to find a criticism, it might be that they're a little top heavy. At least I think maybe that's. Most teams like to build from the goal out. You start with goaltender and strong blue line, and then you get what you can up front. The Wild, I'm not saying they don't go by that philosophy, but they've taken what's available to them. When guys like Parisi and Bannock are available on the free agent market and they want to play here, you take advantage of that. Is it overstating? Am I overstating it, or is anybody overstating it to say that the Wild are loaded up front? And when I say that, it's because guys like Howla emerged last year as an offensive threat, but he's on a third line. And a third line is typically a checking line. He's a great two-way forward. But he showed last year that he could score, and he could score big goals 5-on-5 in big situations. And we know that Matt Cook's no slouch, and Fontaine, emerged. And I'm still not ready to give up on Zucker, even though from time to time it seems like the organization is. But, we know that you got, Parisi and Vanek and Granlund and Pominville and Koivu. We know what you got in the top six. But if I look at the forwards, I don't know if loaded is the word, but they're pretty damn close if it's not.
Sir, I would call it loaded because at no time have they ever had so many players that deserve a look in the top six, but don't have the opportunity because they have a top line that's going to be Granlund, and it's going to be Parise and probably Pominville to at least start the year.
Yep.
And then the second line, it's going to be Koivu. And it's going to be Koivu until proved otherwise. There's a lot of people that give him the business a little bit about the offense and not shooting and not being a guy that generates a ton of goals for a guy that's paid like he is and a guy that's possibly blocking.
Good fit for Vanek, though. Good fit. Vanek's all offense. And Koivu's somebody who can make up, as a center, he can make up for some of Vanek's defensive shortcomings and do some of the dirty work.
Sure.
And it's a good match.
And if you look at this team, they needed a shooter. I think what people learn about Vanek is he does take a lot of shots, but he's also complimentary. You look at Jason Pominville, he scores 30 goals last year. He has the shot he does. But,
sure.
but both of those guys do a fair amount of passing, and they look to set up other guys.
Sure. You know what I'm excited for is the power play. That is loaded. If you got a guy like Suter who's going to run it, do you think they'll go 1D, 4 forwards, and then have Spurgeon run the second, or do you think they go Spurgeon alongside of Suter? I think they go Suter, 4 forwards, and have Spurgeon run the second unit.
For the first one, Pominville's been the other point guy, so it's been Suter and it's been Pominville.
Perfect.
Pominville's a little turnover risky on the boards. He tends to cough the puck up or get trapped a little bit, but it allows you to get his shot down in the slot, especially how much Parise behind the net.
Sure.
If you can get Pominville to cheat and get down in the slot, his shot, that's where he generated that 30 goals.
You know who I thought was really underrated in the power play a year ago and is now gone is Heatley, because he gave you some flexibility there. What I thought he was really, really good at is he could go from the goal mouth to the high slot and be effective in either spot. Like if you need to clear out some space and give some guys some room to operate, he'd go to the high slot and just create a vacuum that allowed some guys like Parisi to come in from the side or from the corner and carry the puck fairly unmolested. But Heatley could also get out front and get a stick on anything. Why I love Vanek. Now the people who followed Vanek as a Gopher, they remember end-to-end rushes. They remember, the Ferris State game in the regionals at Mariucci, where he, was just undressing guys and walking around guys and just making people look foolish. But what he is in the NHL is a guy who's up front. He takes a beating and he gets his stick on everything.
Sure, and what people need to learn about Vanek is he fits with the mold. A lot of people call him vanish. A lot of people have accused him of floating or not being involved, but he signed up for a team that's led by Koivu and it's led by Parise,
right?
And they're going to go in there and they're going to work.
Has he lost a step though?
Even if he's lost a step, he's a shooter. I mean, he's a shooter and he's a goal scorer.
But I guess I asked that when you talk about him grinding it out too. That you've got to be quick and you got to be strong, obviously, which he is, but. I feel, when I talk to people about hockey, they seem like they were happy about this, but they weren't as pumped as you might have thought with a superstar name like that.
Sure, and you know what? And the buzz about Vanek is has he lost a step? Will what happened to Heatley happen to Vanek, where the production falls off the table? I guess if you look at what happened with him last year, he was traded twice.
Yes,
he was injured.
Montreal's a tough place to go to.
Yes.
I mean, live out of a suitcase, don't speak the language.
Yes.
You're an outsider. I mean, you unless you're a French Canadian, it's hard to go in there and play. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I'm not trying to be racist about it or anything, but I mean, it's for a North American guy or a Western Canadian guy. And you don't speak the language. I mean,
sure.
Hell, Montreal's like a whole different country. I mean, it is a different country.
Well, but if you're a Minnesotan and you're here, we're apologists for you. I mean, look at Joe Mauer. I mean, he gets unlimited apologies from people that he doesn't need them from.
Is Montreal the toughest media market hockey-wise?
Montreal, Boston,
Toronto,
New York is up there.
Okay.
And if you look at where Vanek was last year, he was in Buffalo, the team that he's played for his entire career. He was basically allowing them to know that he was not going to re-sign there because he wanted to make it to July 1st. And then he was traded for a suitcase full of goodies to Garth Snow in Long Island.
Yep.
And then he tells them, I'm not going to take your mega contract. I'm going to make it to July 1st.
Yeah.
They trade him to Montreal.
It was a tough year for him personally.
I mean, and it was a tough business side because he has teammates that are out there living and dying, and what he's saying is, I'm willing to win with you now, but my future is elsewhere, and it was in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it was in Minnesota the entire time.
People who are not behind this move, I think, really overthought it. I think that they superimposed what happened with Heatley onto Vanek. I think that was a little unfair, but I do feel what Jason's saying because they're the same age and they're similar players. And
Sure.
I just can't see Vanek slowing down as much as Heatley did.
I mean, Heatley fell off the charts.
Yeah.
He really, but the thing is, there's still no regret about Heatley because Heatley's a class guy. I mean, he's a great locker room guy. I mean, he might have had an undeserved reputation. Maybe in this market too, because he came from Wisconsin. I mean, the University of Wisconsin, didn't grow up there, but he was a Badger, so we did like him to begin with. But I mean, he had the drinking issues, the drinking and driving issues, the horrible car accident that resulted in death, and I mean, he's been through some tough stuff on a personal level, and it doesn't make him a bad guy. And I think people thought in their minds for some reason that he's just not the kind of guy you want around. It couldn't be less true. I mean, he is the ultimate team guy, great locker room guy, and he could take a demotion without pouting. He would be ready, when called upon, to step back up into a meaningful role, and he gave him some stuff that matters. I'll still, there's a goal he scored in the playoffs. On a loose puck, it was a loose puck situation right up front of the net, and he got his stick on it before anybody else even saw it. I mean, he just had a knack. If you've got him in the right situations, there's some things he could still do for you, especially on the power play.
Well, and the other thing about Heatley that I think Minnesota Wild fans kind of haven't taken into account is that a lot of that's out of his control. You know, a lot of the problem with Heatley was his usage. You know, Mike Yeo kept him on the top line way too long the year before. And then, you know, it's hard to put a guy that's making $7 million in the press box. I mean, that's just the reality of it. If your owner's paying a guy $7 million, if you traded Martin Havlat for him, if he's a previous 50 goal scorer, and then anything other than something like his first season in Minnesota happens, there's going to be negativity that floats around him.
Sure.
You know, I if you ask the young players, I think Danny Heatley showed them what a pro career looks like when you're on the tail end of it. You know, a team like Anaheim gives him an opportunity, and you know, I'm very, very skeptical that he's going to be able to do what Dustin Penner did before he got traded there. But when you play, if they're going to play him on the top line with those guys, he's probably going to score some goals in Anaheim this year.
Yeah, let's do a quick reset. The Jeff Dubay podcast. It's Jeff Dubay. It's Jason McGovern. It is Tony Dean from HockeyBuzz.com. Check him out. He writes Wild. He covers the Wild. I mean, you basically are almost like a beat writer. I mean, you're there all the time. And of course, Sean Bernard is here as always.
Hello.
And we are at Devil's Advocate Bar, 10th and Marquette. It's right around the corner from the local. And we're going to tell you a couple things about the food and drink here. 40 craft beers on tap. Just a fantastic. It's a beer drinker's paradise,
including this one.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Widowmaker here because Jason's enjoying one as we speak, and it's perfectly legal on a podcast. So suck it, all you naysayers. But if you are a beer snob, and I've been known to be a beer snob from time to time, and I mean I'll tell you the truth right now. Yeah, I'm in recovery from a crack addiction. I have a beer from time to time. I had a beer here the other night. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So leave me alone, damn it, back off. No, but seriously, if you're a beer snob, and I always have been. I mean, I was a Sam Adams guy back in the day, and Summit EPA. I mean, you put a Golden Light in front of me, I'm gonna punch you in the face. Let's just put it that way. You bring me a Bud Light, I'm gonna kick you in the nuts.
That seems
I'm
negative.
gonna kick you in the nuts. But I don't want to, alienate
you don't
advertisers.
Want them sponsoring them.
Did I just ruin sponsorship?
Well, saying you kick somebody in the nuts or punch them in the face might be alienating.
But if you're a beer
enjoy
snob,
that, I suppose.
At least you're honest.
But if you enjoy like the microbrews, the craft beers, and it could be it could be something lighter like a Pilsner. It doesn't have to be a big, thick, Guinness type of thing. But my favorite beer I think I've ever had is a Boddington's. I love Boddington's.
Boddington's, the pub ale?
You know what? If people ask me to describe it, I say it's a blonde Guinness. I mean, 'cause it really is. It cascades the same way with the same head.
Well, it's like a
blonde
nitro
Guinness.
pour. Yeah.
It's really good. It's fantastic. So if you are kind of a beer snob and you like to try the craft beers, the smaller beer, the microbrews, the specialized beers, they've got a variety here that's second to none. 40 craft beers on tap. Come on down and be a beer snob all day long. Try the Widowmaker. During happy hour, we can get you $2 off a Widowmaker. All you have to do is come down here and tweet or check in on Twitter that you're here. And they'll give you $2 off. Now, if you choose to not be here during happy hour, you can go ahead and tweet something about Devil's Advocate or check in when you are here outside of happy hour, and we'll give you $1 off. So you're still going to... I just told you to buck off. Yeah, you heard me.
Right.
But that's the Jeff Dubay special. It's now through Halloween, the Widowmaker, correct?
Yes, it is.
I mean, the Widowmaker will still be here.
Yes.
It'll just no longer be on special. We'll get a new special going for you.
And the Widowmaker is their staple IPA.
And you're having
it
one
is
right now.
very
Tell me
good.
about it.
It's hoppy. It's balanced. It's honestly, it's a solid IPA. And in a world where there are a million IPAs, this one works. This one is stands up to the rest of them.
You know your beer.
I'm a beer guy.
You're a beer snob. So is this a beer drinker's bar? Would you call it that?
Absolutely. Any place with over 20 taps of craft beer, I'm there.
Yeah, we double up on that.
And we got 40 here, so absolutely.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And tell me about the food, Tony. You had a little Philly cheesesteak, huh? No, actually, let me rephrase that. You had a big Philly cheesesteak.
Well, and right now I'm on a no fun league diet because of the change I'm going through. And
what are you, menopausal? What are you talking about?
my law enforcement career.
Well, he did get a salad instead of the fries.
But the Philly cheesesteak, tremendous, just amazing flavor. More in that portion than I could probably ever eat.
Did look huge, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, back off.
I would recommend it to everybody. I had it recommended to me by the owner, and he got it right.
How about that? We walked right up to how many bars can you just walk in, and the owners just sit at the bar, and you go up to him and say, "Hey, man, what's good?" And that's what I mean. Seriously, Eric's almost always here.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a skinny, really good-looking metrosexual guy at the bar, and he's always right there at the middle. And
that's how he describes himself.
His name is Eric Forsberg, and he's got that Nordic look. He's always got kind of like the beard going. I mean, like a scruff kind of a beard going. But you can't miss him. He's always at the middle of the bar. He's approachable. I mean, he's made recommendations to us. We wondered what to get here from time to time. He just points at the menu and says, "Here, try this. You're gonna love it."
And and they fresh cut the fries and everything, and the potatoes.
Unless you get the salad.
They are
Jesus.
so
Tony got the salad.
Dirty good.
It looked good, though.
I'm trying to get under 200 pounds.
It did look good. Well,
Why?
yeah, but
You must
it's
be
lean.
single.
He's tough. Well, he's in law enforcement. So, I mean, he's in the academy.
Well, they make me run everywhere, so.
But you look pretty lean. You don't look like you're carrying a gut or nothing.
Yeah, but I don't want to drag around a Philly cheesesteak and fries tomorrow. You know that. It's
That's
all
fair
good
enough.
today. It's tomorrow. I got to pay
Hey, you
for
only
it.
rent it. Just remember that.
Well, if we
Yes,
can
sir.
get Eric Forsberg away from the bar long enough to come over, maybe we'll get him to tell us about the menu that they call Atlantic Fare. That's F-A-R-E, not F-A-I-R. But there's Eric. But it's meat. I mean, if you look at the menu, it's a meat eater's paradise. It's a lot of meatballs, a lot of sandwiches. I mean, I get. I've had the fish sandwich twice here. It's called the Moby Dick. I don't like to say it by name. It's a little embarrassing for me to order.
Well, you had the chicken balls yesterday.
I had the
too,
chicken
which is
balls too.
also
It's
another
very
embarrassing order, but very good.
You're
Very
right.
good.
Little romance going on.
There's some latency. There's no doubt about it. There's some latency in all my orders. But we'll try to stay away from that. I've had the shrimp poor boy a couple of times, which is fantastic. I mean, how can you not? Whoever thought of taking shrimp, frying them up, and put them in a sandwich is a pure genius. And I know that's saying a lot because it's a southern thing. And there are not a lot of geniuses in the Deep South, especially in the New Orleans area. And I think that's where the whole po' boy thing comes from, isn't it? Louisiana.
Except for food, where their food is just
Yeah,
outstanding.
You're right.
And party.
I think they take all their intellect and pour it into food and booze
music,
in the
music.
Deep South. Yeah,
Sure.
and music. Yeah. Well, I'm not a country music guy, but there's some good. Dave Matthews
Jazz.
Band
It's all-
is from
it's all
Virginia.
jazz.
And all the blues and all that
Jazz.
stuff.
There you
it's
go.
It's a Vice City. Vice City has all the best worst stuff for you.
I've
you
only
know?
been there briefly because I was taking I was taking a cruise, and that's where the cruise was leaving from. So I spent like an afternoon there just roaming around. And speaking of hockey, it was a tough day because it was the day that I was pretty tight with the Potonli Kowalska group. And Vanek was a part of that. He was his sophomore year. They were the two-time defending national champions, and they were rounded into form just in time for to make it a three-peat. And they were playing in a regional final that day in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at Van Andel Arena against the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs. And I was traveling. I mean, I was in a plane, and then I was going to get on a cruise ship and be out to sea. And I was going to get back in time for the Frozen Four. But I all day long, I'm dying to find out how are the Gophers doing against Duluth. How are they doing? They lost 2-1. I mean,
Heartbreaker.
I had a guy from Victory Sports. I forget his name. Great guy. Victory Sports was carrying the Gophers at the time. And he was going to make sure that, and I did get him. He had the games on DVD for me at the first port of call, which was in Jamaica. And so in Jamaica, I got the Gopher hockey games on DVD.
No way.
Yeah, he's a good. But when I was on the fan, people kissed my ass. I don't know why they did, but they did. But I remember being on the phone that night with. First, I got a hold of Nate Miller, who's a good friend of mine and a former Gopher, and he was just really bummed out that they'd lost. And then I got Grant. Grant's still a good friend of mine, Potonli, and I got him on the phone. And there's nothing like a locker room at the when a team loses in the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's the most depressing vibe you'll ever experience in your life. I mean, you got Grant Potonli. If you cut him now, he'd bleed maroon and gold. I mean, there'd be a little streak of each that runs down his arm, and I mean, he's still on the staff. I mean, and he will be forever. I mean, you'll have to carry his dead body out of Mariucci Arena. I mean, he's that dyed-in-the-wool Gopher. But I mean, I got him on the phone, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. I mean, when the game ended, Kowalska, Riddle, Paul Martin was a junior, and that was his last Gopher game. Thomas Vanek was a sophomore. That was his last Gopher game. They sat in that room and they wouldn't take the jersey off. I mean, you got to rip the jersey off them. I mean, they'll sit there for hours. They just don't want to. They can't believe it's over. I mean, then that was, they'd won back-to-back titles. They were seniors. They thought they were going to go out on top, and they lost a tough one, 2-1. It was just a heartbreak. And as a matter of fact, when they were down 2-0 late, Potonli scored the goal that got him. He made it 2-1. He scored on a 2-on-1, a perfectly executed 2-on-1. That put him up. That did put him up. It cut the lead in half and gave him a chance. But I mean, I'm on a cruise ship talking to this guy, and he's just despondent. I mean, it was tough. And then, a couple years later, 2005, I was there in Columbus when another really good group of seniors led by Judd Stevens, great kid out of Wayzata, and now he runs Maynard's. His family owns and runs Maynard's. Just a great family, the Stevens family. And I remember going to the locker room after they had lost to North Dakota. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone with Grant Potonli during that game. I'm sitting there. It's 4-0 in the third period, all right? We're losing to North Dakota, just bummed out, just sitting in Columbus. And my phone starts vibrating into my pocket, and I open it up, and it's Grant. And he's playing in the minor league. He's probably like in the Lowell Lock Monsters or something. He's playing in the AHL. And I pick up my phone, and he's just MF and everything. How are we fucking losing to these fucking North Dakota? He's just in my ear. I'm like, I know, man, this sucks. I'm gonna go get drunk after this game. And then all of a sudden, we score. It's 4-1, and I can hear the crowd. Hey, Grant, we just scored, and he's watching on cable, so he's got a little bit of a delay. I'm like, dude, we just scored, and the crowd's spelling out Minnesota, and then all of a sudden I hear him yell. He's like, we scored. I just told you we scored. Just pay attention. And then all of a sudden they drop the puck, and 30 seconds later we score again. It's 4-2, and the place is going nuts. I'm like, Grant, he can't even hear me, but Grant, we just scored again. And he's on the phone. He's just sitting there, just still kind of, hey, Dubay, we scored again. I'm like, dude, I'm here. You don't have to tell me we just scored again. But by the end of the game, I mean, it was just. I remember Chris Harrington it was 4-2. We had just scored twice in like a minute. We were coming hard. And Harrington was, I liked him. I was a big fan of his. Great hands, offensively skilled defenseman. I mean, he had a couple of shortcomings in his own end. He wasn't a big, tough guy, but he was a skilled kid and a good kid, too. And he could let a one-timer go. I mean, he had a bomb. And it's 4-2. We just scored, and we were on the very next shift. And I don't remember who was setting him up. Might have been Ryan. Might have been Rybo, Grant's brother. Somebody was just feathering a drop pass, and Harrington is between the dots, stick up in the air. I'm at that moment I'm thinking 4-3. I mean, he is between the dots, and he is ready, and somebody just kind of dove and just put a stick on it just before it got to him. And I got to him in the locker room. He was a senior, so this was his last game. And I get to him in the locker room, and he's got the red puffy eyes, and he's got the jersey they just refused to take off. And I said, Harry, dude, when your stick went straight up there between the dots, I'm thinking 4-3. And he looked at me and goes, no shit. He said, I fucking had it. He was so bummed. But there's nothing like that locker room. There's nothing like that locker room when guys have played their last game. You can't get the jerseys off them. And I'm like I said, I was getting on the one time I was in New Orleans. It was just when Vanek's career as a Gopher ended. And that group was as dead. I love Troy Riddle, Matt Kowalska, Paul Martin. Those are diehards. Those are great guys. Those are great representatives of your program. And it all ended for them that day. And I'm on a cruise ship, and I'm like, for 2 days I was bummed out. Then I got some internet access, like on Tuesday, and saw that Parisi signed, and that was all right. The rest of the week I was fine. Parisi just signed. Oh, Blaze is leaving? Oh, I'm all right. Sure. That week it just fell apart up in Grand Forks. Blaze left, and Parisi left, and then I got to Jamaica, and it was on. So, I was all right.
Well, that's a great story, though.
Thanks.
And it really... It really shows the Gopher Nation, Gopher hockey.
I'm a storyteller, by the way.
Which is probably why you're so good at this.
I'm just kidding.
And what it does is it ties in the state of hockey now has at every level hockey that matters.
Yeah.
The Gophers carried the state for a long time. Just being honest about it, when the Wild lines up a team where your bottom six has guys like Richard Park in it, and Stefan Bayou, and guys that are here on a junkie veteran minimum because we don't have young players because Risebrow sold off our draft picks.
Yep.
That there was a lull, and people went to the Excel because it was in St. Paul because St. Paul that's their thing, but the fans supported this team.
Eagle City.
And they were.
You hear me down there?
They were very, very loyal to this team, and now it's paying itself back.
Pig's Eye.
No. It's the bar that we're talking to down there.
Oh, Eagle Street.
Eagle Street. I was trying to stroke a potential client, and I screwed it up. Eagle Street. You hear us? We're here. We'd love to stop by.
We're
coming to Eagle Street. You're still talking to the boys down there? How about O'Gara's? How about Danny?
Talking.
Danny O'Gara. Can you hear us knocking?
Oh, Danny.
No.
Who's ready?
Danny O'Gara. Can you hear us?
I wish I had that.
We want to get east of the river for a little Wild vibe this winter. So somebody got to pick up that option. Back to the Wild. The blue line last year, and let's keep it local. Because last year at this time I was pretty excited when they brought in Keith Ballard. Didn't do much. He struggled, and I felt bad for him because there's a kid who came out of college touted. He was he's part of that group that we just talked about back in 2003. And he came out. As a matter of fact, Martin was the year before. My bad. Martin came out in 2003. This is the 2004 team. So Paul Martin was he was part of that Kowalska group, but he was a year gone. But that was Ballard's last game against Duluth. That's when Ballard came out. And now that I want to make sure I got my facts straight. But that was a run of defensemen. I don't know if the college hockey's ever seen better. From Leopold to Martin to Ballard to Goligoski. It was a pretty sick run of defensemen at this school. And not that the other guys who played like Harrington were any slouches, but those we're talking about like NHL elite defensemen that have had great careers. Leopold has been injured, but Paul Martin has quietly been an elite defenseman in this league for a long time, and he does it. he does it by never doing anything wrong. I mean, there's nothing flashy about Paul Martin.
Kind of like Suter?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, he's I'd call him Suter Light. I think and I call him Suter Lidstrom Light because they're the kind of guys who just don't. He's not going to dangle and go end to end, and you're going to go, oh my God, what did he just do? Like Bobby Orr. He's not going to go Bobby Orr on it. But he's never going to. Paul Martin has never. I don't think he's ever made a mistake in his life. I mean, he's robo defenseman. He's just a machine. And I mean, he's just. Yeah, you have to. And I'm not trying to come off as a hockey snob, but if you don't understand hockey, you might not ever understand Paul Martin because he doesn't pop off the screen at you, but he never does anything wrong. But it was a phenomenal run of defenseman. But getting back to Keith Ballard, who is a guy who had flash. I mean, you didn't have to be a genius watching college hockey to see how good Keith Ballard was, because Keith Ballard did it all. I mean, he would lead a rush. He would, he'd dangle. He'd walk people. He'd, just be dynamic on the power play. I mean, he did it all. And he came out and started off really well in his NHL career. First couple of years, it turned a lot of heads and started to get into a position where he looked like he was going to make some money and have a good run. And the injuries really slowed him down. Sure. Came here last year looking to reestablish, looking to get the thing going again. And it's some uneven play, some injuries. Things didn't really work out that well for him. And now I'm a little concerned for him because you got a wave of youngsters that are right behind him. Led by like Dumba, for instance. Give me some of these young defensemen. They still have Tyler Kuma. They don't still have Tyler Kuma.
No, Tyler Kuma's gone this year. We're looking at a bottom three that'll probably include Christian Folin, who came from UMass Lowell. He's a top college free agent.
Yeah.
He's a big kid. He's 6'3". Mm-hmm. Just a great story. Dropped off at a Greyhound station, picked up, played in Austin for the Bruins, walked on to UMass Lowell. Just a great opportunity. He's a big kid. He's a right shot. He's going to fill Stoner's role probably on the third line.
Okay.
More skilled, though.
Sure.
He's a steady guy. He can carry the puck. You're not going to knock him off. He separates defenders. He'll probably punch a guy in the face or two. You got Matthew Dumba. Matthew Dumba's dynamic. Matthew Dumba's going to create moments where fans who don't know anything about hockey fall in love with hockey. And he's just got to learn positioning. He's got to learn assignment. He's got to learn when he can take that chance and when he can take that opportunity. I say it, and it's not very fair to him.
Was Trouba available when they drafted Dumba? Did they take him ahead of Trouba?
They did.
That's a gutty pick.
And they took him. They took him ahead of Trouba for the dynamic moments, the genius moments.
Well, he's tough. I think he's tougher than Trouba, isn't he?
He's tougher. He's a little smaller.
Yeah. But he's thick.
The kid's 20 years old. He can't even drink a beer legally yet.
Puffy.
You want to put some. You can't drink a Widowmaker yet. You want to put some size on him.
We'll get him a Jeff Dubay special. We'll sneak him in.
Maybe you
no,
want to.
I'm just kidding.
Maybe you want him to go to Des Moines and knock some bodies around and dominate in the AHL.
I've gone to Des Moines and knocked bodies around. That has nothing to do with it.
Well, we might have to take a road trip this year because they're going to be fun down there. The Baby Wild is going to be fun.
Who's coaching that group?
It's Kurt Kleinsdorf.
Okay.
Kleinsdorf is a Minnesota guy. He's had success before. I think he's won a Calder Cup previously. The coach that was there previously is in the KHL. He built it.
In Russia, right? The KHL's in Russia?
That's correct.
You know how to get KHL games, right? Firstdoor.org. Firstdoor.org. You get I'm serious. KHL for free.
First row.
Firstdoor.org. But you got to get up at 5 in the morning to see it. But
sure.
I mean, they're there. So if you want to see some KHL, as a matter of fact, last year, before a Judd Dubay show, Judd and I are watching a KHL game. And who do we see behind the bench? Mike friggin' Keenan. Yeah. It's like, what the hell's he doing? He didn't open his mouth once because he doesn't speak Russian. I'm like, well, how the hell does he coach?
So, but is the broadcast actually in Russian?
Oh, yeah.
So you got the,
right now, Firstrow.org is so cool.
Guy passing to the other guy.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not heavy accents. It's just Russian. I mean,
just Russian.
I mean, it's.
Well, I didn't know any Russian. Das
last
year,
it was the Friday before the opening ceremony of the Olympics. So they always have the opening ceremony on a Saturday. And this was like a Friday morning at like 5 a.m. I get up and I flip on firstdoor.org on the computer, and I got Russia versus Finland, Olympic hockey. Like it always starts before the opening ceremony because they got to get the games in. So I mean, it's like it's 7 in the morning. It's a great. Where were the Winter Olympics? Where were I can't even remember. Sochi. Yep. So yeah, it was like 7 in the morning or something, and I'm watching Russia Finland with Russian announcers like. Yeah, it's speaking just straight up Russian. I mean, I didn't understand a word of it, but I'm thinking, how cool is this website? Sure. I mean, I just dug that. I'd still dig that website.
Well, especially since a lot of undercovered,
it's completely illegal.
If you ever, if you ever wanted to see an Arrows game in Minnesota, you'd have to go to front row.
First row.
Or first row. Because they're never going to cover AHL hockey here, which is a shame because a lot of those Wild kids that'll be here in a couple of years, you get a chance to see them in Des Moines.
Isn't there a market for that here?
I need a Diet Coke, Andrew.
I think there's a market, but this is the first year. So they moved from Houston to Des Moines, which changed the dynamics of it. So last year was kind of a transition year.
Okay.
And that team was junky. It was the last year of Kuma, of Foucault, of I think their top scorer was Connolly, who they traded, who's a career minor leaguer. The best players that were on that team ended up in Minnesota. Eric Howla was the best player for a while.
When the Wild got him in the 7th round, and I saw him play his first 2 years at U of M, I thought that is the sickest 7th round pick I've seen in my life. And there was no doubt about it. His speed. I mean, his speed stands out in the NHL.
Yep.
And his versatility.
Yes.
What you don't get about get about Howla is he'll score goals. He has speed. But this kid plays every inch of the ice, and he can play on the wing. He can play center. You can match him up with any player in the top 6, in the top 9. And going forward this season, a lot of people are very anxiously watching what Yo does with Charlie Coyle, because Charlie Coyle is a big kid. He's a run through a brick wall worker.
He's got to start scoring some goals, though.
The tough
if they're
thing
going to keep him up there.
The tough thing is he ever going to be a 25-goal scorer in the NHL? And if he's not, then maybe you move him to the third line, and you move Nino Niederreiter up, and you play Howla and Coyle together.
Yeah, I like it.
Because those kids outwork everybody. They're going to play a different type of third line. So they're going to be able to score some goals, but they're going to be able to maybe mask for a guy like Zucker, who you play Jason Zucker, you play Howla, and you play Nino Niederreiter, you play Charlie Coyle there. That's the most talented third line the Wild has had in the entire history of the franchise.
Until last year, Jason Zucker probably had the second most important goal in the history of the franchise. I mean, Brunette's goal is still the most important, and now Niederreiter's is number 2. But Zucker gets the bronze nonetheless. But this is a kid who's got speed. He's got a crazy, wicked release on his shot. I mean, he's all offense. He's a kid from Vegas who cut his teeth playing roller hockey, which I think a lot of people honestly hold against him. I think there's some resentment in the league when a kid like that comes in and makes a mark. But he is defensively irresponsible. I mean, there's got to be a reason that he's also very fragile physically. I mean, are these the reasons that hold him back? Because for a team that has been challenged offensively for quite some time, he brings an element that they've lacked, and he still can't crack it, and he still can't stay in there.
You got to be careful with young kids, though. So the company line on Zucker has been that if he's not playing in the top 6, then they want him to play significant minutes.
He's too good to be on the bench.
Yes, and he's too good to play fourth line minutes in a role that you might put a guy that's just going to beat on people, a face puncher, or and so. What I've noticed this year, I've been in contact with the training camp, and what I've seen from Zucker, I think he gets it that if he's going to make this team, he has to add more two-way to his game. He has to play 200 feet worth of hockey. He has to be more complimentary of his teammates.
Stay healthy, too. I don't know. How do you blame a guy for that? But he can't stay healthy.
Sure.
I think you somehow can.
Bro,
why are there guys that stay healthy?
You got to get into the Widowmaker for my boy.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Oh, nice.
Well, they're probably guys that duck hits and play dirty like Alexander Burrows.
Well, I mean, Zucker's. It goes back again. I keep bringing up guys that I know, but I mean, Nate Miller, an old friend of mine. You know, he played for the Gophers. He was a late. As a matter of fact, they Woog recruited him after he lost Toby Peterson to CC. It's kind of a last minute addition, and Nate was Lucia's first captain at the U. And Nate was he's a top 6 forward and a power play guy in college. But his role, if he's going to make it as a pro, is going to be as a grinder. And he explained to me how hard it is to make it for a kid out of college, because for the most part, if you're a guy, not a lot of grinders come out of college. I mean, when you look at the Matt Cooks of the world, they're not college hockey players. No. I mean, they're not. And if you're going to make it out of college, you're going to make it as a skilled guy. You're going to make it as a Bukestad, as a Hall.
When you say they don't play college, do you mean they go straight to juniors or something then? And they're
like the tough guys. The guys who you see on third and fourth lines are typically guys who come out of the junior ranks, don't you think? I mean, like tough neck kind of Western Canadian guys. Guys who grew up on the farms and the plains of Western Canada, or else Moose Jaw or Saskatoon or Medicine Hat.
Sure.
I mean, the places like that. You gotta love a guy from
hockey.
Yeah, the guy from Saskatoon. You gotta respect.
Bugard types, right?
But, yeah, exactly. But so Nate told me, it's really hard to make it. It's really hard to make it as a college kid in the NHL because you really have only 6 spots. If you can't make it as a top 6 guy, I mean, the third line is reserved for checkers, and the fourth line is basically thugs and guys who just can't get ice time. So you got to be a top 6 guy and a guy who can play power play, or you're just not going to make it. And there is still a bias against college guys. As a matter of fact, he was with the Kings. He signed as a free agent with the Kings, and Sutter, Daryl Sutter was the coach. And obviously, we know that he's a Western Canadian guy who's got he's a well-respected coach. He's a very successful coach, but he's a guy who wants to have Canadians. I mean, he just does. Like Nate said, the first time he suited for a preseason game with the Kings, with the big club, it's the last few minutes, last few words before taking the ice, and Sutter's got the lines up on the grease board, and a little note next to each guy, like it's soft in the corners, or don't beat this guy to the puck, things like that, and the college guys are just circled, and this is college. Just completely dismissive. Like, this guy is a college player. He's a pussy. Don't worry about him. College. Just all one word. I mean, it's just, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the NHL. There's a lot of bias against the American college. Now it's changing because, I mean, I'm not saying that guys like Phil Kessel will break the mold because Phil's not known as a tough guy or a rugged guy. As a matter of fact, he's not. I get the impression he's not a really well liked guy. Hence being the last guy picked in the All-Star game a couple years ago, and then when they did the captains and stuff.
Sure.
And he's also got. I like Phil, and hey, we're Facebook friends, Phil and I. So to watch what you say here. I don't want to lose him as a Facebook.
Well. Yeah.
But he is. Well, look at that. He doesn't want me to leave a ring. Sean really. He's a thoughtful guy. But. The thing with college guys is some of them are thought of as prima donnas. Some of them, like their what doesn't smell, and they got a bad reputation still. Now it's changing with guys like Parisi. I mean, if you don't respect Parisi, you don't respect the game. I mean, there's nothing not to like about Zach Parisi, and this mold is starting to break. But for years and years and years, if you were an American college hockey player, you were labeled soft. I mean, you had something. You had to go and improve it. Even if you were a high draft pick, like a Vanek. I mean, you had to go prove that you could play with an edge.
But I also think that there's been an evolution of the NHL game.
Yes.
If you look at and I totally agree with what you were saying because
things are changing. Thank God.
You get a guy like Jordan Schroeder.
And I'll tell you, start with.
And then the point that you're saying is they're making about college players, well, then it kind of justifies it because his game doesn't translate.
Right.
And so
Bukestad's is.
So you look at Chicago.
Bukestad's translate.
A couple of years ago, and they beat the Minnesota Wild, broke our hearts 2 years ago.
Yep.
By scoring goals with their third and fourth liners.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure.
And that's what we're hoping for here in Minnesota this year. We're hoping for the third line being a skilled line, rather than the Brodziak where he fans on every other shot. And just
a guy who scored 20 goals, by the way, a couple years ago.
And I love Kyle Brodziak just because he's one of our guys, and he's been like grassroots for he was here before we got good. But man, he fans on everything. He's for everything. It just breaks my heart.
Damn near.
Yes, he's snake bitten, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So if you have a third line that's going to be skilled, that can do a defensive assignment with Haula, with Nino or Coyle on there, and then you can get Zucker to make the team, and then stay out of Yoa's doghouse and be in the lineup. Then you can have your fourth line and be a hybrid and have it Brodziak, Cook, a kid named Cody Almond, who's a big kid. He can play center. He can play wing.
He's running out of chances, though, isn't he?
Well, he went to Europe to prove that maybe it's time for them to give him a chance, and now he's back, and I think he makes the roster.
What about Schrader? I'm glad you brought his name up. Have they shipped him out yet? I mean,
Schrader got put on. I believe that Schrader got put on waivers.
Okay.
I know John Blum, who's another kid who adds some offense. He went second unspectacular training camp, got put on waivers. These are all guys that are going to be the core of the Baby Wild.
See, people
they're going to be call-up guys. I mean, they're going to be around.
People
Does
who know
Schrader
me
go to
think,
Iowa?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is Schrader going to be part of the mix?
Not yet. I don't think Schrader makes the roster.
See, people who know me,
I think Schrader didn't do enough and wasn't provided enough opportunity because the top 9 is set.
Yes. Well, this table's a little wobbly. I'm sorry, that's my fault. Schrader is a guy. I think people, expect me to have a guy's back who went to the U. I don't have a lot of respect for this kid, and it's just he didn't show much character when he was here. I mean, he came in with a ton of talent, a ton of hype, And his freshman year, they put him right on the top line, and he looked the part. And I was a big fan. They put him with Stoa and Barabal, and he was the deal. And that team jumped out of the gates, like lightning. They were number one in the country, and they really started to tail off. It's the year that Lucia started to have his health problems, and there are a lot of reasons things started to go bad for the team. But that's first and foremost. Is Don just physically he couldn't do what he needs to do to make this team, to make this program what it needs to be. And it was a tough time for him, and my heart still goes out for what he went through. And I'm glad we got him back and healthy, and it shows in the success of the program. But Schrader
was that in and around Okposo leaving?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was right after, I think. Wasn't it right after? Because Schrader was the big gun after Okposo. If I'm not mistaken, I could have the time. The time it could be blurred.
The Wild had a shot at Schrader and didn't take him.
But he's so soft. Here's what bugs me about Schrader. He came back for a sophomore year and didn't give a shit. And I know that we sometimes you get in trouble when we try to crawl inside the head of an athlete and say, did he care or didn't he care? But Schrader mailed in a season as a Gopher. I mean, he wanted to leave at the holidays, so he is after Okposo. So remember, he wanted to leave at the holidays, but he didn't want to be. He didn't want to do what Okposo did. He didn't want to be labeled that, so he stayed.
It was ugly.
So he showed a little bit of dedication in that regard, but he still mailed it in. And what really pissed me off is he went to the World Juniors as a sophomore and lit it up. I mean, he did nothing at the U, goes to play in the World Juniors is fantastic, and you can see the difference in his effort. Then he came back and mailed it in for another 2 months. And
the self-serving springboard.
I'm telling you.
That's the Chris Humphreys.
If you put the M on, and don't give a shit, I'm not going to be your guy.
Sure.
And George Schrader did not give a shit.
Wow.
I'll never forgive him for it. I mean, that's an opportunity that guys would give their right nut for, and he had it, and he did not give a shit.
For a long time, I think Okposo was labeled with that too.
Which is unfair, because Okposo was passionate. He loved being here. Sure. He loved being a Gopher, and Garth Snow put him in a bad spot. I love Kyle Okposo.
Sure.
I love Kyle Okposo. He's a tough kid. He's a smart kid. He's a good kid. He's a kid with a ton of talent. As a freshman, the first 2 months of Kyle Okposo's freshman year, I thought at this stage he is so far ahead of where Phil Kessel was. And he was at that point. Kessel was kind of slow to go when he got here. I mean, it took him like a month to get a goal, and it was a penalty shot against Mankato that he actually kind of fanned on, and it kind of trickled 5-hole. My memory's so stupid with things that don't matter. But that's how Kessel got on the board. I mean, he didn't score a goal for like a month. It took him a few weeks at least, and he got a penalty shot against Mankato and semi-fanned and trickled it 5-hole. And I mean, he had 51 points as a freshman. There's nothing to sneeze at. But I mean, Okposo as a freshman is going between, through his legs and behind the back to score against Mankato also. I mean, Okposo had brass balls. I mean, he'd go to the dirty spots, and how many guys in college have the nuts to try to drop it between their legs, drop their stick behind their back, and score behind? I mean, you remember the goal?
Oh yeah.
And I was in Mankato, and I was there in person, and working for Fox, and I think I was working for Fox at the time, but I was there in person. And I didn't really understand it. And people around me going, "Did you effing see that? What the?" I'm like, "Well, he just got up front and flipped it up high." And then I saw the replay and go, "No, he didn't." I get it. I mean, and I got home and watched the replay, and I Woog saw it right away because he was the analyst at the time, and he's like, "Oh my God, did I just see what I just saw?" And was it LaPanta? I don't know who was doing the play-by-play at the time. Didn't see it right away. And it's just like you see the replay. It's like, Jesus Christ, how did he even think of trying? I mean, and Okposo did not want to leave. You
said he got screwed. How was he?
He got pressured.
They made him.
He got pressured. I mean, Snow put him. Snow put him in a spot where he had to go, and if he wouldn't have, he would have put himself behind the 8 ball in his organization. He wanted to stay. He wanted to stay. He wanted to finish his sophomore year.
Okay.
He wanted to finish his sophomore year. He didn't want to go. He was, and there was some bad blood between Snow and Lucia for a while, and there should have been, because Lucia had every right to be pissed at this guy for saying we don't develop talent. I mean, we're putting more guys in the NHL. Minnesota and North Dakota and Wisconsin are putting more guys in the NHL than anybody. Boston College, whatever. The last 10 years, look at the record, look at the numbers. Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota. Wisconsin above all, to be honest with you. It's because Eves plays a complete NHL style of hockey. I mean, his guys come out of college ready to plug right into a system. I mean, because that's how Eves coaches. And Lucia and Blaze, when Blaze is there, have a more wide open style. That's not always as defensively responsible with the forwards, and they give a lot of freedom to the defense. So guys might come out of Minnesota and need to learn some system stuff and might not be quite ready to step right in. But you can't say that they're not developing talent, for God's sake. I mean, they're putting more guys in the NHL, as many as anybody other than maybe Wisconsin. Well, so he had every right to be pissed. But I guess, I mean, to hear Don takes the high road. Don's a class guy, and he won't say a bad thing publicly about Snow. And he says that they've moved on and they've gotten an understanding. And the next year when they drafted Aaron Ness, the Islanders, I guarantee you nobody's throwing any parties, down at Oak Street. I mean, they weren't thrilled about it. But at least, Ness got 3 years.
But
Ness got 3 years.
I mean, ultimately, I think
didn't he? I think he's played 3.
I believe he did.
He's still there.
So. They played here 3 years before they didn't mess with him. At least Snow kept his hands
Right.
off.
The other thing is, I mean, it ends up a happy story because Okposo gets to play with Tavares, right?
That worked out great for him.
And he's amazing now.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
And the Islanders have paid it forward. Jared Spurgeon, Nino Niederreiter.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes
That's
on
true.
and on.
Yeah,
I mean,
we just
point.
absolutely took them apart in the Niederreiter. And I was never. I'm not a fan of Clutterbuck, and I'm not saying this in hindsight. Clutterbuck, and I've talked to people who agree with me 100% on this. When he was a fan favorite, going out and leading, I do finger quotes, leading the team in hits. He led the league in meaningless hits.
Yes.
He would find guys skating with their heads down and light them up for fan reaction. He was the 4th of July. He was ooh and ah. That's what he wanted. He wanted people sitting there going ooh every time he made a hit.
Clutterbuck's
he did
a
more
savvy.
meaningless hits. More meaningless hits.
He's a savvy guy because he did more with less. And
He's a shitty hockey player.
Yes,
exactly.
It's unbelievable.
But we killed him in that trade.
He's got
What were
the
they
mustache.
thinking?
Yeah.
He's got the mustache. He does the hair.
Oh yeah, he thinks he's Colin Farrell.
He
or
comes
whatever.
flying down the
Seriously.
wing. Every shot he puts it over the net. It's just
Oh, he's
How
terrible.
did he
terrible.
do last year? Did he do anything?
He did nothing. He
I
didn't do
think
dick.
so.
And they were talking about playing him on the first line, and I was like, have they seen him play? He can't hit the net, and it's not to tear a guy down because
Oh, sure it is.
because,
Screw him.
because Clutterbuck
Suck it.
nice. Well, because Clutterbuck was the one fun thing during some dark periods.
Yeah, I
but
guess.
he benefited from it because he's smart. If
Well, you know how to capitalize. You know how to take
yeah.
advantage of a moment. But he wasn't a good hockey player.
Sure.
I mean, he wasn't a smart hockey player. He is what he is. I mean,
He nailed it, though.
Yeah.
He did what he could with it.
Yes.
He definitely did. He got
Was he a
every
third-round
dollar
pick?
out of it.
Was he a third-round pick?
third round pick.
And we got a guy who was picked in the drafted in the top 5 of the first round for him.
Sure, and a third for a guy that could score 25, 30 goals this year. That a kid that showed up here humble, worked his tail off,
Puffy.
played a defensive role. I mean, if you free Nino Niederreiter, I like to call him the Knight Rider because I'm old enough to get the reference. Right?
I used to have a black Firebird.
People call him El Nino.
I did. It didn't talk. It pissed me off. I thought it was awesome.
Isn't that what Rocky drove in Rocky 2? Wasn't it a black
Well,
Firebird?
you got a good memory.
I think it was.
I don't know.
You're the one who remembers some crazy goal.
It's not Gopher hockey related.
Yeah, exactly. That he doesn't know.
I can tell you what, Tony, Matt Kowalski, I'll tell you what he drove in college. He called him dually. He had like a dual exhaust pickup truck. So they called him dually.
Nice.
Banging that around downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, yeah. You know what? We're getting to the last 8-9 minutes of the show. We've been hockey intensive. It's a Wild Wednesday. And we are going to do this every Wednesday as long as the Wild are still playing. So hopefully it's right into June and July, if that's what it takes. Tony Dean from HockeyBuzz.com is the guest, and he will be each and every Wednesday. So, we're going to take – did you want to do Grill the Host, or you want to finish up with 8 minutes of hockey talk? We got about 8 minutes left. It's your call.
Let's do Grill the Host because I want to talk about hockey and I'm going to grill you about some hockey. I think that's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Best of both
Grill
worlds.
the Host. Have I told you about Grill the Host?
No, I don't know about Grill the Host.
I just started it. He's only the third guy to do it. I give the hot seat guest. Oh, he got the cheesy fries. Is it the patoonie or whatever it's called? Whatever, I can't remember. Poutine. That's what it is.
Poutine, yes.
It was a very Canadian, so it goes right in with Wild Wednesday. Basically, I'll give the hot seat guy 3 no holds barred questions, and I'm not pretending to be the most interesting guy in the world. But again, I've been in the winning World Series clubhouse twice, not once but twice. I mean, I've been in the champagne showers, not one time but 2 times. I hosted a top-rated radio show for 10 years. I've been a drug addict. I've been in recovery. I have been incarcerated, and you were a CO when I was incarcerated. This is a bad.
How
bad,
perfect is that?
You can't make it up. It's gone full circle. And what else? I've done anything. I was on TV for a little while. I mean, I've done some things.
And
I've lived a little.
you have people that seek you out because you have been very, very honest about when things go bad rather than
There's no
just
reason to lie
selling
about
us
it.
the dream. Because a lot of people sell the dream because it benefits them individually. And I don't think that we want that in Minnesota anymore. We don't want to be sold 90,
Sure.
90 wins doesn't make you a bad manager. 90
Get off
losses.
Gardy, man. Get off Gardy.
I had to take a shot.
I'm just kidding. So anyway, the bottom line is I thought maybe it'd be interesting to let people come on and take 3 no-holds-barred questions, interview-style questions. I mean, then Julius Collins started off last week for me. He was the first guy to do it, and he basically came in here and put me on the spot and made me say something bad about Chris Hockey. So that's the kind of stuff I got to put up
Yeah,
with.
let's go K-fan. Let's go down that road.
You can go down that road. You go anywhere you want. It's got to be tasteful. Like I said, don't ask me who had the biggest crank on the '87 World Series champions, because I won't go there.
I think that's where you wanted. Oh, yeah. So you look like.
But I will tell you from the visiting locker room, Bo knows. Let's just put it that way.
Jeez.
Bo knows.
All right. Well, you got 5 minutes to do it. So. Go
So,
for it.
the first
Anyway.
one I wanted to go
right.
Met Center.
Yeah. What about it?
What's your most memorable Met Center event? Whether it be concert, whether it be North Stars.
Met Center for me it'd be high school regionals, because back in the day that's the high schools that I went to Hopkins. So that, I mean, you know what that means? I mean, that means I got to put up with Minnetonka and Edina in the regionals every year. Waving money at us, acting like a bunch of punk-ass snobs. I mean, every year. And then my senior year, Hopkins was good. I mean, Hopkins was actually seated ahead of Edina, and that was Ben Hankinson's team. And Hopkins was seated ahead of him. Hopkins had a chance to go to state, and we're playing in the semifinals, I believe it was. A low seed, for that they just, we're ready to dismiss and move on. The plucky Richfield Spartans team that had a goaltender they may have heard of, named Damian Rhodes.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, he played in the NHL, for God's sake. You better have heard of him. But I remember vividly. I'd never heard of Damian Rhodes, but I remember they're doing the starting lineups, and me being the wise ass that I am, I lean over to my buddy, goes, "Damian Rhodes. I hope that's not a bad omen." I got the rim shot. And Damian Rhodes stood on his head and knocked us out. Then he did the same thing to Edina and Ben Hankinson, and they went off to state. And then the rest is history. He went off to play for Michigan Tech.
That was an Omen the movie reference for those of you kids.
Well, didn't anybody get that? I hope people got it. But, I mean, that's how witty I was, even in 1986. I mean, as a senior in high school. I was a puffy little senior at Hopkins High School. But in all honesty, the best memories I have of being at the Mets. I was also there on a positive note in 1981. When my buddy Mike Loney, his cousin Duffy, was the goaltender for the Lindbergh Flyers, and they took Edina West down and went to state tournament. And that's when there's 2 Edinas, Edina East and West. And this was the Edina West Cougars, and the regional final was Hopkins Lindbergh versus Edina West, and Duffy Loney stood on his head, took Hopkins to the state tournament. That was a good time too. I believe that was '81, but there was nothing like the regionals at Met Center. I mean, it was just a blast. It was just always the best time. That damn building would get full. I mean, it would get full, or pretty damn close. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, that's my answer.
Apparently, the hotels nearby were kind of a party too.
Oh, I believe it. I believe
Back
it.
in the day, they were just crazy. Yeah, the
The
Thunderbird.
Thunderbird was always cool. They have the big Indian out front. That was very politically incorrect.
Yes.
Womp 'em. Anyway, let's continue.
And then the Minnesota Wild. So you've come into contact with the Minnesota Wild from inception, correct?
My inception or theirs? Theirs. Oh, sure.
Theirs.
Certainly.
Who did you come into contact with during this Minnesota Wild franchise era that was the biggest put-off to you?
Oh.
The biggest jerk?
Huh. I was going to go the other way. Well, Doug Riseborough never struck me as a real nice guy. I mean, he was kind of full of himself. I never had a great relationship with Doug Riseborough. But can I go the opposite way for just 1 second and just say that Andrew Brunette and Darby Hendrickson might be the 2 best human beings I've ever met in my life. I don't care what sport. I don't care what walk of life. You are not going to meet better people than Darby Hendrickson and Andrew Brunette.
They are what you see on TV and hear.
Two of my favorite people in the world. I mean, Darby Hendrickson might be the single nicest man on the planet. And Brunette's cool for a Canadian. There goes my mic.
Mic down.
But seriously, Andrew Brunette, and they're best friends too. Those 2, Darby and Bruno. But we had Bruno on our show. He's a regular guest on our show, and I mean, I can't say enough. I mean, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. I'll just say Darby Hendrickson and Andrew Brunette, the 2 best people I probably have ever met in sports.
My cousin played hockey with Darby.
Speaking of
Danny.
Richfield,
Speaking of Richfield,
again.
it was Richfield. But the other thing that my cousin said is he said we were in about first grade T-ball or whatever. Maybe they were coach pitch at that point. But he just said Darby was kind of an athlete in general. He said like in first grade the kid was just crushing the ball.
His brother was the deal too. Danny.
I know Danny was too.
Yeah,
sure.
And
was Danny 2
great
years
dad
older?
too. Their dad was a coach at Apple Valley. Larry.
Yeah. Was Danny 2 years older?
Darby's 2 years older than Dan.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
Darby's older.
All right.
I grew up St. Paul with Joe Mauer. Same grade, same everything. Played football, played basketball, everything. He's been a machine.
You're only going to get 2 questions, buddy, because we're to the last minute. So we got to say our thank yous and our goodbyes.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, dude, you're going to be back next Wednesday. You're going to be back every Wednesday as long as you want to. So, again, thanks to the sponsor, Devil's Advocate. Beer special. It's the Jeff Dubay special. It goes through Halloween. It's a Widowmaker. It's $1 off. If you tweet something about the bar, if you get the bar's tag, the bar's handle, whatever, at
Take
Devil's
a
Bar
photo.
MN. Take a photo of the bar, tweet the bar, check in on Twitter from the bar, and if you happen to do it during happy hour, you get $2 off your Widowmaker. And tell us about the Widowmaker.
The Widowmaker is a brilliant IPA. I would recommend getting your ass down here right now and getting one.
He's had 1.5, and he's not slurring his speech yet, folks. So it's
yet.
it's like the Venus flytrap Johnny Fever's experiment, and we're going to test your reflexes.
Yeah,
and then Johnny Fever keeps getting faster. He gets better and better with the more. He's got to get her start drinking before the show
I
next
might
Monday.
start drinking next week before the show starts.
Tony, thanks for coming. Tony Dean, HockeyBuzz.com.
Thanks,
Get a plug in for your blog here, quick.
Yeah, I just want to say hi to the Wild Hockey Buds community. Anybody that supports my writing, it's
You got 5
a pleasure
seconds.
to be here. I thank you very much. Bye.
Jordan Schrader, suck it.